This is Glambition Radio, episode number 225, The Big Mess in the Middle. Welcome to Glambition Radio. I am your host, Allie Brown. I'm an entrepreneur, mentor, investor, and mom of twins. I love thinking big, doing different, and exploring ideas that disrupt the status quo, especially when it comes to women, because we are rewriting the rules for leadership, business success, making money, and changing the world. And we're doing it with style. Let's go. I have not done a solo episode in several months, mostly because I didn't know what to tell you. I had a few clients say, Allie, what's going on? Can you explain it? I'm like, you tell me. I'm just taking this in. And one client brilliantly summed this up over the summer to me. She said, this will be known as the great dumpster fire of 2020. And, you know, I'm not going to get political today, but I'm going to tell you where I stand, because I have had a few people asking me. They're like, Allie, we can't read you. Where are you? And I'm going to share that, over the years, I've become a staunch independent. I'm registered that way because even more than ever, I feel the dual party system dramatically divides us. It's how you keep a population weak, by the way. You get them infighting, because if we actually came together, we'd get things done. And if you haven't noticed, they're not letting us all try to quite learn and take in each other's viewpoints and come together online either. Public censorship is at a level we haven't seen in at least my lifetime in this country. And my biggest wish isn't for others to think like me at all. It's to help people remember how to think for themselves, which I think is a lost art or a lost necessity right now. So the best place for me to kind of come at everything that's going on right now is the title of the show is called The Big Mess in the Middle. I once had a colleague say to me when I was in the middle of a big transition, she said, in the middle of a surgery, it looks like a murder. And that's how I felt sometimes at transitions in my life. And that's a good way to describe what everything appears to be right now. And there are so many ways I could go with this show, but I had to pick a lane. I am not going to comment on the pandemic. I'm not going to comment on any political movements right now. What I am going to cover is the obvious places and maybe not so obvious places. We need to be very observational and make critical decisions going forward for ourselves, our businesses, and our families. That is absolutely my lane. So let's back up, right? And just kind of pretend like you're taking a deep breath and kind of getting a bird's eye view of our country right now, and even the world, and what has happened, what areas have been affected over the last year. And some of these changes were happening long before, by the way, but some really came to a head this year. The first is traditional companies, professions, and jobs are disappearing or blowing up quickly, right? We saw that even after the last recession, right? The companies, especially the big dumb companies that didn't see what was coming and were not prepared for any changes. When tech came along and all this stuff, they just had their noses to their desks and they're working on the same business plan. They were not even seeing what's coming. And then there's some who truly were doing the work but got caught off guard this year. Well, no one saw this coming as far as we're told. So things are just disappearing that people relied on for a long time as far as traditional companies, more traditional type of jobs, and even some non-traditional ones. Healthcare is a mess. And this year showed how vastly unprepared we were for disaster type situations like these. Can't argue with that. There were some areas that were prepared, but many were not prepared. Institutions of public safety, such as our police, are being disrupted, rethought, and reworked. Our educational model as a whole, which has not changed much since its initial design for the industrial age over 100 years ago, it's being questioned now. From grade schools to universities, current events have brought to light that some things aren't going to work in the new world. I've some good friends who are sending their kid to, expensive private institution. And now they're about to move in. By the way, conveniently after tuition's due, they get notified that school's going to be online for this whole semester. And they're sitting there going, is this worth it? Is this what we expected? Is this everything that we kind of thought it would be? And do we need to even do this anyway? The questioning's good. The questioning's good. This is all inconvenient, but it's all good. I'm getting there. And in general, some horrible things have been happening for a long time and are finally coming to light. And some of the developments in the news, for example, they're disturbing to learn about some of these things, but they're coming up out of the darkness. It's the breakdown before the breakthrough, right? Coming to the light. And did you know that this is so interesting? I have some good friends who are into this stuff, and I love checking in with them. Like, what's going on the planets right now? I am so just curious. Well, apparently, if you didn't know, there are shifts occurring at this moment whose energies are so turbulent. They haven't been seen since about 500 years ago. And what happened then? Martin Luther broke away from the Catholic Church and started the entire Protestant Reformation. Think about that historically. What a huge event that was and that led to at the time. Very, very intense. This is more intense, what's going on now. So, by the way, if you've been feeling this energetically, and mamas, take into account how much you have been handling on your shoulders this year. If you're not under the duvet crying once in a while, you must be a machine, because we have had to absorb keeping our businesses going, being thrown into a home environment with our kids, okay? And you're not homeschooling your kids. You're like trying to keep your kids educated during a pandemic. And now going into the fall, the kids are being trained to be online all day. There's so many things going on, and so much of it has fallen back on us. So give yourself some grace. Give yourself some grace with these energies coming at you. If you're still above ground and your kids are doing okay, it's a good day. Let's take that in. So the theme this year, besides being a giant dumpster fire, is we can't rely on anything anymore or anyone else. It's time to lead our own destiny. No one is going to take care of us. No one is going to lead us to the finish line. Hey, in some cities, no one may even answer 911. So it's time for you to choose to stand up and lead yourself forward. I'm going to explain how to do this and give you a few steps to put into action in a minute. Do not submit to the fear. Stay above the noise. Think for yourself. And take care of yourself and your family. Now, this maybe seemed like one of those obvious things, but it kept coming back as I was working on my notes. And I'm like, I got to talk about this. And it's money. And I'm disappointing those of you who just want to talk about the spiritual steps you need to take. And listen, hun, you got to make more money than ever. And here's why. Let's just back up first and look at kind of the State of the Union. It's evident that if we were concerned before about an increasing wealth gap between the rich and the poor, it is only going to get worse. And you need to decide what end you're going to be on. In decades past, and I don't know if it's just more me growing up or being young, money seemed more like having luxuries and conveniences and, living the high life, the big house, the luxury car. And I grew up thinking it was about those things because we didn't have a lot of money and we're totally happy. And you could have still a lovely little life. But then as I got into my years of wisdom with a family, I soon realized how much more it, quote, buys you. And going forward, having a higher income is going to be more important than ever because, I want you to hear me, it's going to be about having better choices for you and your family. And I don't mean a nicer car. I mean ones that impact you in a more profound way than ever before, like it or not. For example, it could mean the difference between getting a pandemic test where a doctor comes to your home and you get a 24-hour turnaround, or you have to wait weeks and then sit in a line in your car in the sweltering heat all day and then get the results back a month later. It could be the difference between your child getting high quality in-person education versus her being trained to be working on a device all day at home where you're still required to supervise her. Or, sadly, no education at all, as we're seeing with low-income students who have no tech at home. They are the ones suffering most of all. It could be the difference between you living in an area that you don't feel safe in, or maybe is becoming dangerous, or you're tired of all the issues and you just want to get out. I have a lot of friends moving from California, by the way, to Arizona and other states. And being able to move somewhere that feels safe and peaceful and just aligns with what you want for your family. And of course, in any time, look, more money in the bank or in your safe, some people are saying you should have more of that lately, is a cushion that buys you more choices and more time to make decisions. But especially in a year like this, even businesses that seemed safe got shut down without notice. You need that cushion, okay? So if you're one of those people who never really cared about money, you always did okay, or you said, we just need enough to be comfortable, don't freak out, but it's going to directly affect you more now, depending on what options you have, okay? So just take this in and take a deep breath, because there is good news. And here's where we're going to go into the head and the heart and kind of lift you up above all this stuff, right? That's all happening around you. You are actually in control, because I know since you're listening to this show, you either have a business or you're ready to start one soon. And going forward, your business will be more important than ever. And you have so many more choices than being locked into a job. And this year, we've clearly seen the types of businesses that may be more at risk than others in times like these. I mean, 2020 dropped some big clues. If you don't pay attention to the business news, by the way, you want to. You will learn so much. There's totally different angles on what's going on. And it can give you incredible ideas, both for opportunities and things that you should be, aware of. And look around you for business stories and case studies and be aware of those as well. I have had some clients who had a hard year. They had to really work hard at looking, how do I pivot? How do I shift what I'm doing? Maybe their entire industry was disrupted. Maybe they had to change lanes, driving full speed, add a new revenue stream. I mean, they're doing it all. And because they are so action oriented, but they come from a place of strategy, they're going to be fine. I have others who've actually had their best years ever, single launches that did over 7 figures. Revenues topping 8 figures, new brands birthed, books debuted. I mean, who would have known it? But this was a fantastic year for them. The good news about that is money is still flowing. If you see businesses doing well, don't get jealous. Don't get envious. Go like, there's money flowing. There's money flowing. And, you may as well grab your piece of the pie. We're entering fall right now. Momentum is gaining incredibly. I hope you feel it too. Like just things are starting to pick up and you have a decision to make. If you keep waiting and reacting to the news or your environment or your industry, you're not really going to get anywhere. But I know it's hard because we are surrounded by a fear factory, an absolute fear machine generated by mostly the media, but other sources as well. So I want to leave you with a few recommendations, especially for those of you who may not be sure of your next move. The only thing you can do right now is look at what you can control. And I'm going to actually focus this show on something that not many people may have talked about. You may have heard people say, do this strategy or do that with your business. There's been so much of that since the spring online. And I actually want to share a quick story that got me thinking about this. A few weeks ago, the public charter school that our kids are in, they were set to open in person. It all looked good. They were meeting all the qualifications, and our kids just loved this school. The teachers did a great job. The kids were thriving there. So we're going to send them back. I was ready to pack that lunchbox, man. I was like, I was setting the intention they were going to go. And then, a week before we hear they're going to be home online. And we're like, okay, it's not the end of the world. We'll go with the flow and all this. And then we get the schedule and it basically has them logging in at 8 a.m. and then, on and off through the whole day. And they're on there though till like after 3 o'clock. And for many reasons, I'm not going to go into on this podcast, that didn't work for Brett and I, and it didn't work for the kids. And so, it was one of those discussions, when you're thinking it and you wonder if your partner's thinking it. And at the same time, you kind of go, we could just pull them out. And so we did. And the last 2 weeks have been me diving just headfirst into everything about homeschooling. And I have to tell you, as a quick side note, we're terribly excited more than anything at this isn't as hard as we thought it was, the way we're going to do it. And I'll be telling you guys a lot more. And, we're figuring out this all as we go, obviously, but we're also not stressing out about it too much. It's been 2 weeks, the kids, we're not going to screw them up too much, right? Like the first month, right? So I've been listening to all these podcasts and audios, and there's like a stack of books in my bedroom and all this stuff. And I was listening to an interview. I cannot remember what show it was on, but there was a mom giving advice who'd been doing this for years. And she had some method I think she was talking about as well. But she was talking especially about children who are reluctant learners. I think that's what it was. And she said, those are the ones you can't order the child. You have to order her environment. And once you order the environment, the right things start to happen naturally. And I was listening to this at the gym, and I remember just stopping. I was on the elliptical, and I just kind of went, and had to type that into my phone, because immediately I saw the application for so many other things. Order your environment, the one you have control over. What do you have control over? First is your head. I'm going to start there. Some of you wake up and check the news. That is just disgusting. I'm sorry. You cannot do that. You wake up and check your social feed. That's just as bad. And it's even worse than the news right now, I think. Mainstream media, social media, your email, those friends who are sending you inflammatory information just to piss you off, right? Just start your morning with a positive book or podcast. I like actually starting with the homeschool stuff because it has nothing to do with my business even. It's just kind of this fun, exciting topic I'm diving into. Some of you love to journal. Some of you take time outside. That's good for you. Some of you like to start with a great workout with positive music. Make yourself a new mix to listen to. Some of you like starting that time with your kids. I have to say, we're so excited not to have that morning rush. And instead of all of us waking up in a tizzy and trying to make sure they get out the door on time, we're cuddling in bed reading in the morning. I mean, it's just life-changing, right? How do you start your day? I will admit that I give a little glance at the email in the morning because some of my team's on the East Coast and they may need something. And then, so I get a little work out of the way and then start my morning in that positive way. Figure out what works for you, but you really have to be more conscious of this than ever. Are you letting media in your mind more than anything else? Some of you are. So be careful what you let in your head. The second is your space. Who do you let into your space? Are there friends that live in fear? And when you're around them, you kind of pick up on that. You have your COVID crazy friends. We have we have some friends who obviously I won't mention, and I hope they don't listen to the show. But, when this whole thing went down, you could kind of see there were the friends who were like, yeah, okay, we'll see in a few weeks and we'll see what happens. And when the restaurant's open again, we'll get together. We'd love to see you guys. And then there are some friends, I'm not making this up, who they barely left their house since March. And I don't know if we'll ever see them. We're like, do you need us to bring you food? Or will we ever see you? It's obviously we kind of don't align on how we see the world and interpret risk. And, there's a balance between, being aware and cautious of things and being unwell. I wish people would say wellness instead of safety. There's a reason, by the way, the word safety is being used. Do you feel how you feel different when you say that versus wellness? Wellness is something you have complete control over. Don't you forget that. The third thing is the circles you choose to be in. The problem with most mainstream groups and in even business groups is that they think like, well, the mainstream. They are catering to the lowest common denominator. I remember hearing that quote, and it's said all the time, but it's such a good one. And I believe it first came from Jim Rohn. At least that's who I heard it from. And if you don't know who Jim Rohn is, he's passed. I got to see him right before he died. and he was just an incredible personal development author and thought leader. He was Tony Robbins' original mentor. And people in the industry joke that Tony kind of took his stuff and added cool music and flew in through the ceiling. And, he made it more for the next generation. Jim would kind of still come out, hobble a bit and lean on the lectern and lecture you. It was the old school way of doing it, but I loved him. I loved his stuff. And I remember hearing, I think I first read it in a book he had, and it said, you are the average of the 5 people you're around the most. And at that time I was in a job, and it was my last job in New York, which I liked that job a lot, but it was so funny to read that at the time because I'm thinking, there's these other, I call them the kids, but these other kids I work with here, they just want to go to the bar after work and they're all talking about what's on TV. And I don't even watch this stuff. I'm into reading right now and I don't even have a TV. I couldn't afford it. I just always felt so different. And if you feel different about all this, and what I'm saying is resonating with you, you may be here right now for a big reason. You may be here right now to help lead us through this time, either yourself or supporting someone who does. So be careful with the networks you choose to be a part of. Be careful with the circles that you want to be in right now. It's a very critical time for you to be discriminating. I know that word's used in a negative so many times, but I'm talking about in a positive way, like choosy who you're with most of the time. We all still have those old friends that we'll be with forever and we love and can catch up and hang out. But have you chosen new circles? Have you chosen new friends or people you've seen say, you know what, I like her. I like the way she thinks. I want to be around more of that. Or I like this group. This sounds perfect. This sounds like what I want to be a part of. Go listen to, if you're participating in any women's networks right now, you're going to love this show I did on January 8th. It was a show I did called The Problem with Women's Networks. And what was very saddening to learn in the research I had done, as well as my own experience, is how dumbed down a lot of the information is in these places and how dumbed down the conversation is at a lot of these events. And that is why I created my new network, The Trust. And I'm telling you, when you find that group that you belong in, it's time to gather. Gather in person when you can, when the time is right, when the local ordinances permit or whatever you need to, the boxes you need to check. But man, that gathering in person, I didn't realize how much I missed that. And I felt that so strongly when we had our first meeting in Miami with the Trust. And our guest speaker was Ellen Latham. And we just were all in tears at the end. And we created this new sisterhood. And I have to tell you, man, when we got shut down after that, and I lost some mojo. I was deflated. I was quite deflated for a bit and gave myself that time, though, to take in what was happening and how I could use this to power us up even stronger. And I'm excited to say and share that we're gathering again. It's time. So in just a few weeks, we're hosting our live official fall meeting here in Scottsdale, Arizona. And I'm over the moon that most of the members are making the trip to join us in person. I'm hearing Allie thank you for leading this. We don't care what it takes. Some of us are going to drive down together. We're going to do this and we'll just comply with the local ordinances, whatever's going on. And for the ones who can't travel at this time, we'll be offering special virtual sessions. We've got a private online platform set up just for this. And man, I just can't wait to get in there, shut the doors, and do what we do. We're going to be talking about best practices for marketing and sales, timely investment opportunities. Who's talking about where to invest at this time? We will be thinking bigger, working bigger, and leading our tribes right now from a place of strength versus being scared. Our special guest advisor has been on the show before. It's Christina Stembel, founder and CEO of Farm Girl Flowers. Man, she's going to have some stories from this year. And that's what we want to hear. The behind the scenes battle stories. She's going to be joining us live online from San Francisco. And there will be many margaritas because we've earned them this year. And something else that's great? I just have to share. This is so funny. A few of the ladies are bringing their guys, their husbands, boyfriends. And I kind of made a joke at one of the meetings. I said, Brett, my husband, should do a spouse program. In the old corporate days, they'd have the spouse program for the wives. Well, we have a spouse program for the husbands, and the husbands are into it. Like they're all going to get together and golf and go to the club and have a drink. And so they're all excited about that. I'm sure they're going to spend the entire day talking about how easy we are to be with, right? So I also have a feeling we're going to be discussing many of the same topics I touched on today, but in a real closed door, no recording, let's go down the rabbit hole session on what we all know or feel is happening right now. And that's the most exciting to me. So if this resonates with you, or you think there's another woman you know, another female leader who's broken through the $1 million mark and would love a group like this is just what she's been craving, check it out. It's jointhetrust.org. And if you have thoughts around this show, anything to contribute or ask, join my conversations on social. I'm most active on LinkedIn and Instagram. I'll see you there. Thank you for joining me for this episode of Glambition Radio. If you enjoyed the show, make sure you subscribe so you automatically get new shows every week. And I'd love if you left us a review. We are on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, and other platforms. And I'd love to hear from you. Come join the conversation online. You'll mostly find me on Instagram, but also on Facebook, Twitter, and more. Just head to alliebrown.com. You will find them all there. And you can also learn about upcoming opportunities to meet in person. Glambition Radio is the elevated conversation for women leaders, and I'm honored you've tuned in.